Hi everyone and welcome to the channel and welcome back to another episode of the FreeCAD for Beginners, where we're teaching the fundamentals of FreeCAD whilst we learn workflows. Today we're going to be using a part design workflow and learn how to create features such as these on non-planar faces. So we have this model here. The features we're going to create are these pads and pockets that have been placed along here. We're going to be learning how to groove out this feature here that runs all the way along, and how to attach these features to non-planar faces. We're not going to be using data planes, we're not going to be using the curves workbench. We're looking at basic sketch attachment and how to use scaffolding sketches to allow for these features. So this is different from construction geometry. This is a scaffold sketch that we can use to align and attach our sketch to the surfaces and faces. I hope you're enjoying this series. And let's have a look at this technique. If you like what you're seeing, please subscribe to the site. I also have a Ko-Fi or a coffee site that you can donate to if you so desire. And that's at ko-fi.com/MANG0. I also run a Patreon where you can subscribe and get extra content. And that's at www.patreon.com/MangoJellySolutions. Any money that's kindly donated will be used to expand the channel. So for this demonstration, we're going to be creating a mudguard mount. And this has a number of surfaces that are not planar that we need to add features against. For this, I'm going to create a new body and a new sketch along the XY plane and hit OK. Now I can start sketching. First thing I'm going to add is a circle. And I'm going to set the diameter just to get an idea of our dimensions. Let's come over to the constraint of the diameter and set this to 50 millimeters. I'm going to create a number of lines and we're going to use these as construction geometry. I'm going to set the angle between these two lines using the angle constraint and set it to 72 degrees. I'm going to do the same between these two, going with the angle constraint and set that to 40 degrees. We'll use these as construction geometry. So what we need to do is take these two lines and set them to construction geometry. Now there's an icon on the toolbar to do this. Let's toggle construction geometry, or we just come out to sketch geometries and toggle construction geometry. They become blue. They won't show up on the sketch when we close it. So you can see we just got the circle there. Let's come back into that sketch. Next, I'm going to create an arc. Now I'm going to create a center and endpoint arc. And I've got my auto constraints on and avoid redundant auto constraints. That means when I hover over that center point, we call coincident constraint, which I'm going to use by clicking. Come up to the top, we get a point on line constraint. We come around and connect up to our construction geometry with a point and line constraint as well. While I'm here, I'm going to set this arc radius using the radius constraint and set that to 35 millimeters. Next, I'm going to create a line between this point and this construction geometry and make sure that this line and the arc are tangent to each other. We get a sketch constraint substitution, which allows that tangency to flow. We're still fully constrained, so now we can add our second arc. I'm going to use an endpoint and rim point arc this time, and I'm going to create an arc here, like so. Hit escape or the right mouse button to get the mouse pointer back, and use the arc and the line again, adding tangency. Now I'm going to add some constraint to that of around 25 millimeters. That's a radius there. I'm now going to create another arc coming from this one. This is going to be quite a shallow arc. It's going to travel over this way. Using the arc again, endpoints and rim point, we'll create another arc that sits here. Again, we add tangency between these two using the tangency. Okay, that. And now I'm going to move over to the other side and add a line between here, this circle, all the way down, connecting up on this line. I'm going to take this point and the point of this arc and keep them in line. So those will be kept in line. I can now add some height in here. But first of all, I'm going to come up to the top and place a line in here as well, from this point, and connect it up to the circle. This is constrained. What I'm going to do is use the trim tool, or come up to the sketch geometries, and trim edge, and trim out this circle. So we just get the arc here. Next, I'm going to place another arc, and this time from here to here, and create an arc. I'm going to hit escape or press the right mouse button. I'm just going to move this over here and place a line that connects up between this point and this point, closing the geometry. We now need to add our constraints. So this arc here, I'm going to add a constraint using the radius. This is going to be quite high, so this is going to be 260 millimeters. Now it's important to understand the center point of this arc is going to be way out here. Now this is going to come in handy in a moment. So now I'm going to take this arc and also add some radius, around about 460. You can see we need some more constraints in here. So I'm going to set a height, 18, and some distance away here of 20. And we'll set some length here of 115. Finally, we'll set some length here of 100. So there's quite a few constraints in here. A lot of them are radius constraints, and we've got some length constraints in here. So it can look a bit messy, but we can neaten these up by coming over. And if we look, we've got the angle constraints, which we can turn off from the view. And we come down, got the lengths, the radius, and we can just hide those from the view so we get less constraints cluttering our workspace. And we can select them from the screen as well, just to highlight them and just uncheck. Once we are happy, then we can close. And now we can pad this, and I'm going to pad it 20 millimeters. So we've got this shape. For the next step, I'm going to remove some material from in here using a subtractive sweep, also known as a subtractive pipe. We're going to be using this edge to remove material using the profile on this planar face. Now you can see this face here is planar because it's been made up of straight geometry. This face here won't be planar because it's been made up of an arc. So if I create a sketch upon there, it says you need a planar face as support for a sketch. This one is planar because it's a straight line that's been made up, and we can create a sketch on there. Let's close that and just delete that sketch. So the first thing I want to do is remove material from here. So I'm going to select that face and create a new sketch. Our sketch is flush with that face, that planar face. So I'm going to import some geometry. I can import the points, and I want to make a groove in here. These 2 points here, and we create, let's say, a simple sketch of a slot. Hit escape, get mouse pointer back, and we're just going to place that into position. I want something like that. I'm going to take this point and this point, zoom in, grab that point, and just keep those in line. I'm going to set some distance away. So these 2 points, set length of around about 5mm. I'm going to do the same on the other side as well. So coming in this point and this point, set those at 5mm. We'll set the diameter or the radius of 3mm. So we created this profile against this face. If I hit close, you can see that profile there. That sketch is sitting there. Notice the angle. If I use this profile to remove material from here using a subtractive sweep, we're going to get into a bit of a problem, because this angle will leave material here. Let me show you what happens. So using that sketch and coming up to the part design, create a subtractive feature, subtractive pipe, and then add edge. You can see the object that's been selected for the profile is sketch 001, which is this one here. Click add edge. I can add the edges that I want to remove, and you can see how that's being removed along there. But when I get to the top and have a look what's happened, you can see the angle that's at. Now we've got two choices here. If I hit OK, what you'll find is that we get part of this face at an angle which matches the same angle here being removed. But I want to remove this as well. Now I can create the same sketch on here and use it as an additional profile by coming into the subtractive pipe and changing the section transform to multi-section. First of all, we'll need a sketch upon here. So we need the same sketch, basically what we had here. I can copy the sketch, but it's quite easy to create that sketch on that face by clicking on that face, create a sketch. Again, I'm going to come in and pull in the 2 points, create a slot, making sure that the points are in line, and also making sure they're 5mm away. Same on this side. And setting some diameter or even radius of 3mm. Therefore, when I close, what we can do now is go back to the subtractive pipe, come down to the section transform and create a multi-section transform in here. This means that I can add another section. If I click add, and we'll come up to our sketch. If we click on the sketch, that adds it in there, and you can see that has changed. If I click OK now, we get that running all the way through. The other way, if I delete that subtractive pipe, we've got the two sketches. Let's bring back the sketch here. So let's see what happens when I do the same, and this time use the subtractive pipe from the toolbar, and we've got it selected, sketch 002, so the profile here, which is now pointing straight up, and we add the edges working the opposite direction. And hit OK. We get the same problem, and that it doesn't come out the other side. But this may be the effect that you want. You may want this groove in here and it's just to stop at this point. If we wanted it to go all the way through, let's add another edge. We could use this edge as well and hit OK. And we've gone all the way through, added the groove all the way along there. So now we've got this. How do we add features on here? So this surface here, add in a sketch when it's a planar face. So I want to create some holes in here. First I want a pad, and then I want to create a smaller hole in that pad. So we get a raised feature. So this is our next step of how to solve this problem. To solve the problem regarding the holes and non-planar faces, let's move first to a planar face. So let's take this one here that's been created with planar geometry. Now it's important to think how this has been created. The reason why it's planar is because it's been created with a straight line, and also the material that's been removed has been created with a straight line of that slot geometry in there. So this one here isn't planar, this one isn't planar because it's created with the arc of the slot geometry, and though it's been created with a path that's straight, but this one here we've got a straight path and a straight geometry of the slot geometry. So if I create a sketch upon there, you can see how that sketch has been aligned to that face. Now if I create a circle on here, you'll notice that the circle sits flush on that face, and the normal of that sketch runs this way, so straight out is normal. And this is what we're looking for, because if you look at the angle, it follows the angle of that face. So we need to follow the angle of these faces here, and there's a little trick of how to do that without using such things as datum planes or the curves workbench, but with sketch placement. So let's close that and delete that sketch. We need to first go back to the sketch that was created with this pad. Come in here, let's hide the subtractive pipe by pressing the spacebar, and come into the pad and select the sketch. Press the spacebar. Let's double click the sketch and see what we have. There's two faces I want to target to create these holes, and this arc here and this arc here. So the faces that have been created with this geometry. Let's zoom out and have a look at the center point of the arc that creates this arc here. If I come back to the constraints and try to find the constraints to deal with that arc. So this one here, you'll see an arrow pointing to where that arc is. Now notice if you look at the arc and look at this line. Follow that line. If we had a hole here, this will be the normal of that sketch. And if we move it to the other side, that line means it's orientated in the correct direction. Let's hide that constraint. And this time let's take a line from here and place a line down. And I'm going to place another one down as well. So we're going to create two holes in here. Now these lines I can convert to construction geometry. So I'm going to take two lines and convert them to construction geometry. And I'm going to zoom in now and take these ends and bring them back up. So they're just above, and zoom in. So for creating construction geometry, we're going to be using lines to orientate our sketch for the holes. So I'm going to create another line now, and I can connect it coincident to this point and attach it to the line. The same on this side, coincident and point on line constraint. The reason for this is because when I bring these down closer, and we'll bring the tops down, we can add some length to this. If I come out the sketch now, hit close, we don't get a massive line going all the way up here. We just get these two little lines that sit like so. But you can see a problem. If you look over to the left hand side, we can see we can't do this in the current sketch. So I've done this in the sketch in the pad. We can't actually do this because what we're doing is creating a sketch that is not fully closed. So let's come back into the sketch and just get rid of these lines. So I'm going to get rid of the construction lines and these two lines here. So we need a way of doing this without destroying this sketch. Let's close out. Now the good thing about FreeCAD is that when we create sketches, we can reference external geometry. That doesn't have to be from a solid, a surface, a face, etc. It can be from another sketch. So let's keep this sketch active and create another sketch. And it's going to be on the same plane as this sketch, the XY plane, and hit OK. So now we're on the XY plane. We've got the sketch that's inside the pad still visible, which is perfect. Come back to tasks, and let's pull in some geometry. So using the external geometry tool, and we're going to pull in this arc here. And the same thing happens. We get a point at the top, and we get the arc. Draw our lines. Hit escape to get the mouse pointer back, or right mouse button, and then select both the lines and make those construction. Let's zoom in. And I'm just going to place these lines just above, as we did before. And now we create another line from here to here and here. And we're going to position these just below this line. This is going to have to touch the surface of our object. Let's hit close, and you can see those two sitting there. Let's bring back the subtractive pipe and see what we have. Let's hide the sketch of the pad. We don't need this anymore, and collapse the pad. So now we've got a sketch that's inside this body. It's important that it's inside this body because we're going to be referencing this in a minute. We've padded 20 millimeters this way. So I'm going to take that sketch of those two lines and come down to the attachment, not the placement, and the position. And we're going to move this along the Z-axis. And we're going to move it to 10 millimeters. So that's now in the middle of this object. If we look closer, we can see that the sketch is sitting just above this face. Let's come back into the sketch and have a look at what we've got. I'm going to use the section view. So come up to the section view, and if you can't find it, it's on sketch, view section, and it's section through the middle of that object. I want this sitting on that surface of that object. Now I can bring in this line here, as you can see, so that arc, and I can use a point on line constraint with this one, point on line, and this one here, point on line. So those are brought in there. Now sometimes when you bring in an arc, you'll get a B-spline which you won't be able to attach these points to. So you have to put them in the near vicinity. It won't be constrained down, but it'll be near the point where you can actually attach the sketch to. Let's hit close. So we've got our lines touching the surface. Now we can create some features. For this, I'm going to make sure nothing's selected, and I'm going to select the sketch. It doesn't matter which plane you place this upon. So I'm just going to go for the XY plane and hit OK. I'm going to sketch the hole that I want. Well, this is going to be the whole structure because we're going to go for a pad first, just with a circle. And we can set the diameter in a minute. Let's hit close. So at the moment, our hole that we want on this surface is sitting here. If we look at that sketch, and what I'm going to do is just rename that. So this is hole feature. If we look down at the data tab and look at the map mode, at the moment it's flat face and the support is XY plane. Now if I click in that map mode field there, we get the button. Click on the button. At the moment it's on that plane XY. We want to use our scaffolding, this geometry here, to place this in line with this edge. To do that, let's click on plane, so it's saying selecting. So this is the first reference, and select this vertex closest to the face. The sketch has moved. So you can see it sitting there, but it's round the wrong way. This is where reference 2 comes into play. Click reference 2 and this time select the edge. Nothing has happened because we have got the wrong attachment mode. We come down, what we're looking at is normal to edge. So click normal to edge, you see the sketch has been placed actually within that face. Let's hit OK. And I'm going to double click on the whole feature and just change that now. So it's in place. I'm going to use the section view, sketch view section. And we can see it's actually inside. That's no problems. I'm just going to change the size of that to get to the right size. And set some diameter. Of 7mm. Let's close that. So that's sitting in there. What we can do if it's round the wrong way is that I can select that sketch and look at the map reverse and set that to true. If I double click on that hole now, it's now round the other way. So you can see it's round this way instead. Let's close that. A better option, let's just set that back to map reverse as false, is to utilize the other vertex. So let's come into that whole feature, come into the map mode, and we're going to use a third reference. So reference 3, we click on that, make sure it's saying selecting, and select the top vertex. We get the attachment mode already selected. So what's happened is that we've used the vertex for placement, the bottom vertex, the line to line the normal, so the normal of the sketch, and the top vertex, so it's pointing upwards. When we OK that, and then take that whole feature and use a pad, it will pad in the correct direction. One thing to note if we zoom in is to note that there may be some gapping around here. If there is, we can change the type from dimension to 2 dimensions. So I'm going to go up a length of 2. And what we can do with this one, it sends the length downwards as well. So we change this to, say, 1mm, and that goes into the material. When we hit OK, we get our feature. And we can sketch upon here. For instance, I can take this face, and this is a planar face now because it's just a standard pad. Let's select that top and create a sketch. I'm going to bring in some geometry. So I get the center point, and what we can do is just add a circle in the center and close and pocket that through all, and that'll come out the other side like so. Let's hit OK, and we just repeat for the others. So for instance, let's take this one, make sure nothing's selected, create a sketch, XY plane or whatever plane you want, and this time let's go for something different. Let's go for a hexagon. We can place a hexagon style hole in there. And I'm not going to use this constraints, I'm just going to pull that in, close that, and we'll take that sketch and change the map mode. At the moment it's flat face, selecting. First one, we need to come in and select the vertex. If you have trouble selecting the vertex of this sketch, let's cancel out. Select the sketch that's got the scaffolding, this one, or just select it from the screen. It will highlight in the left-hand pane. Come down to view, and then come down to the object style, and what you'll find is a point size, and we can up that point size. I've upped it to 8, and it makes it easier when selecting those vertices. So now we can select that sketch, come back to the data, and you can see the sketch has been selected here. Map mode, come in, first button, selecting for the first reference, and we just zoom in and pick the vertex. That places our sketch in position. Next we deal with the rotation by selecting the second reference, selecting the line, making sure it's normal to edge, and then that's select reference 3 and select the top vertex and hit OK. Make sure afterwards you select the sketch and then we pad. You can see what's happened here, it's disappeared, and that's because we've got some gapping. If we select reverse, you can see it's going into the material. I don't want that, so I'm going to select this down to 2 dimensions, and you can see because it's gone down the second length of 10mm, it's created one continuous body, which is required for the part design. We're just going to change this to 1mm and set this to 2mm. So this is what I was saying about the gapping. You have to be careful with this because it will make your model disappear. And if I remove this gapping to 0, or just place this as dimension and hit OK, we get pad results has multiple solids. This is not supported at this time. And if we're lucky, we should be able to see the gapping under there. But unfortunately, we can't really because of the curvature. But we know it's there because when we go to 2 dimensions and set the second length as 1mm and hit OK, we're all fine. Obviously, we don't need to do the pad. We could do, say, a pocket, and we don't have to worry about gapping because even if the sketch was up here, if we pocketed down enough or just go through all, then that's taken that feature all the way through and that pocket is valid. That's it, OK. And it's the same with any other features on here. For instance, if we wanted to do some features along here, then we would use the center of this arc here. So the arc center, which is just here. And we'll place lines across coming out and attach those features onto here. We can finish this off by selecting all the features. So I want to mirror this across. So this will be all of the features that make up this. So if I press the spacebar on the pad, you notice everything is made invisible. And we can go through the individual stages by pressing the spacebar on each to make them visible. And these make up our model. So if I wanted to mirror this in the part design, all I do is take each of the features, control click them, and then use the mirror or part design, apply a pattern and mirror it. That mirrors those features across and you can see them being added here. So we've got the pads, attractive pipe, etc. It's going across the vertical axis. So that's the right axis. Hit OK. And we've got our finished part. So I hope that's helped you create features on non-planar surfaces. Obviously, we don't have to constrain to the center of the arc. If we've got an arc or even a B-spline that has got some awkward curvature, then we can use lines again, even if they're not connected to the center. It's just got a line on that face in the right direction to allow for that feature to be added. I hope you enjoyed that video and I hope to see you again soon.
If you like what you're seeing, please subscribe to the site. I also have a Ko-Fi or a coffee site that you can donate to if you so desire, and that's at ko-fi.com/MANG0. I also run a Patreon where you can subscribe and get extra content, and that's at www.patreon.com/MangoJellySolutions. Any money that's kindly donated will be used to expand the channel. Thanks a lot for watching and subscribing, and I'll see you again soon.